Hi, please introduce yourself to our audience and tell us why you're running to become Florida's next Chief Financial Officer. What are the key priorities of your campaign?
All right. Well, my name is Dr. Frank Collige. The reason I'm running is because I'm tired of insurance companies taking advantage of Floridians and no one in Tallahassee standing up and fighting for us. And the key aspects of my campaign has always been around transparency, accountability, and Florida first.
Yeah. Many Floridians may not fully understand the role of Chief Financial Officer. Can you explain the responsibilities of the office and how it impacts the daily lives of Florida residents?
Absolutely. Well, most people think of the chief financial officer as the bean counter, which everyone's like, oh yeah, the CFO of a company is the bean counter, and yeah, well, that's a small part of it. I mean, he's makes sure that the bills are paid, etc. But the CFO is also a state fire marshal. He's also the person who regulates insurance in Florida, and he sits on pretty much every board because he is a cabinet member in Florida. So the CFO is actually a very important person in Florida, and especially the insurance part of it, which we all pay insurance. It impacts us every day.
Yeah. You spent years working in the insurance industry as a public adjuster and business owner. How has that experience prepared you to oversee Florida's insurance system as CFO?
That's a good question. So a lot of people don't even know what a public adjuster is. So a public adjuster is an insurance adjuster that represents property owners. We fight insurance companies on behalf of our client. So as someone who works insurance for a living, someone who actually knows the ins and outs, the shady side of the insurance, the bright side of the insurance, I mean, there's not one part of insurance we don't look at. I'm very versatile in insurance. So the CFO, and yes, I'm going to focus a lot on insurance because insurance is the one part of the CFO's job that literally affects 100% of the people in Florida. So as a CFO, his job is to regulate insurance. So actually having a CFO that understands insurance, understands their the highs and lows and some of the stuff that they like to pull. Having a CFO that understands all this, they're not going to rely on special interests or lobbyists come in and tell them, hey, this is what they already, like me, I would already know. It's like, no, that's not how it actually happens. This is how it actually works. And so actually having someone with the experience makes a huge, would make a huge impact on on insurance in Florida.
Florida homeowners continue to struggle with rising insurance premiums and fewer coverage options. What specific reforms would you implement to make property insurance more affordable while maintaining a healthy insurance market?
That's the key, isn't it? We got to make sure that we hold insurance companies accountable, such as one way we can do it is just actually apply the law. It's something that the CFO hasn't done, and the CFO before him hasn't done, and the CFO before that hasn't done. Matter of fact, there's actually a law that was passed that actually requires that the carrier's policy handbook conforms to Florida statute and gets approved by OIR. That hasn't been done. So applying the law and actually enforcing the law is key. That's number one. Number two is we got to bring transparency into Department of Financial Services. And when insurance companies ask for pay increase, policy increase, whatever you want to call it, right now what happens is they go in and they say, hey, we need to raise rates, and they rubber stamp it and say approve. We need to take a step back and say, well, first of all, insurance is a private entity. It's a private company. It's not government. Even though we're mandated to purchase from a private entity, it's not. It's private. So if you want to raise rates, you need to sit and justify it. Sit with a forensic audit to justify your rate increases, because we're not going to let you just make billions and billions of dollars off the back of Floridians and then continue raising rates, because I'm going to protect Floridians against corporate greed. Now, at the same time, we can't chase insurance companies out of Florida because we need them and they need us. So it's going to be a balancing act. The number one thing though is actually enforcing the law. That will go a long way.
Yeah. Your campaign emphasizes greater financial transparency and accountability in state government. What changes would you make to ensure taxpayers know how their money is being spent?
Okay, so right now you got the CFO going around the state talking about how your government wastes money, but he can't back it up with any facts. We've actually submitted FOIL requests and they don't have any documents to provide. Why? Because it's not an actual audit. There hasn't been any audits. So here's the best way to make sure that there's transparency and make sure that citizens know where the money is being spent. The CFO, the law already says that the CFO can demand budget reports and everything from any entity that receives government funding. He can also audit them. Well, we can't audit all 2,000 entities. It'll cost too much money. It'd be $750 million or more per year. Now, what we can do and what I will do, and I don't need legislative approval. What I can do is reach out to every location that receives money from Florida and say, you will report your annual budget, but you're going to report it by date of transaction, how much that transaction was, how many of that item, vendor, etc. A full, detailed, line by line. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put it on DFS's website for the whole world to see, because we want citizens to audit their elected officials and then hold them accountable. And whenever you find actual true fraud, DFS will come in. We will do a actual forensic audit to back up those allegations. And if we find that there's fraud, we will take action. So the best way to the best way to show transparency is by being transparent. We don't need politicians and bureaucrats going around the state telling us, oh, your government's wasting money. We need proof. We need actual evidence. And the way to do that is make everything public. We have the right as taxpayers to know where our money is being spent. And we're hearing people, oh, we're spending it here, spending it there. But you're not telling us how much you're spending here, how much you're spending there, and telling us the line by line items. I want line by line. I want date of transaction. And the reason I want date of transaction is because I was an impact card holder for my unit when I was in the military. An impact card holder is the guy who holds the credit card. And at the end of the fiscal year, they would come to me and say, hey, Thornton College, we need to spend all this money or we're not going to get funding next year, or they're going to cut our funding. So you would end up spending a whole bunch of money on stuff that you didn't really need just so you can justify more funding next year. So if we have date transactions and what they bought, we can actually see the pattern and be like, oh, you're wasting all this money at the end of the year on needless stuff, and we're going to cut your funding. And the people should be able to hold their elected officials accountable. And when you have a mayor or a county commissioner or anything along those lines who is wasting your money and you can see it on black and white right there on the screen, you can hold them accountable. You can not hire them. You cannot what I mean by don't re-elect them. Hold them accountable.
Yeah. You have proposed transforming Citizens Property Insurance into more of a reinsurance provider rather than a primary insurer. How would that work? And what benefits do you believe it would provide to Florida homeowners?
No, I think when Citizens was implemented, it should never have been implemented as a primary insurer. It should not have. Yes, should we have a part of Citizens that's a last resort? Absolutely. You should always have a backstop, right? Now, Citizens should have been from the very beginning a reinsurer, which is insurance for insurance companies. And Citizens should have been a reinsurer for hurricane losses. Period. That's it. For hurricane losses. Now, if we do, and legislators say, yes, that makes sense, and we move forward with it, then when you take and you offer the lowest reinsurance rates in the nation for hurricane losses, okay, only for hurricanes, we can entice other carriers from across the country to come to Florida. And when you have more competition, it drives down prices. So the whole idea behind this is one, we want Florida to tell carriers across the country, hey, you come to Florida, we got your back. Secondly, and most importantly, my goal is to lower insurance rates. I'm running on the whole idea of we want to make insurance affordable again. And people are losing their homes because they can't afford the insurance rates. They can afford the mortgage, they can afford the property tax, but the insurance rates got so high they can't afford it. And so what happens is people are losing their homes. People are filing foreclosures. People are filing for bankruptcies. I mean, it's terrible. So we need to make insurance affordable. And the only way to make it affordable is have enough competition to drive down prices.
As a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, what leadership lessons from your military service would you bring to the Department of Financial Services?
I believe in transparency and integrity, and that's what we're going to bring in DFS. We At one point people trusted their government. It's been a long time, but at one point people did trust their government. I want DFS to be the flagship of Florida in transparency and accountability, and to do so, it's going to be all about we're going to do it with integrity. And so if you're gonna go around auditing every entity in Florida, you probably should have started with your own backyard. And Tallahassee should be the very first entity that gets audited because they're huge, and there's going to be a lot of overlap. There's going to be a lot of duplications. There's going to be a lot of why are you here? Why do you have this job when we can do it this way? Why is it this way? So we need to start in Tallahassee first and work our way out. Because if we're wasting if we're wasting money at the state level, it just trickles down. And we need to start by leading the example. And in the military, when you're put in charge, your highs and your lows fall on you. So that's, the buck stops with me with DFS. And so it's going to be exactly, DFS is the number one person to audit the state of Florida. So start with Tallahassee. And like I said, I'm going to make everything public. Start with Tallahassee, show all it public. And the only thing that I will not make public, and I'll make this crystal clear, anything that deals with state or national security. Sorry, not happening. I will not jeopardize security. However, everything else, like if Tallahassee wasted money purchasing a small piece of land, way overvalued, and it comes to find out there's PACs and lobbyists and stuff tied to that land, I'm going to make it public because people should know. So start with Tallahassee, lead with integrity and transparency.
Fraud, whether in insurance claims or government spending, costs Floridians millions of dollars. What strategies would you use to identify, prevent, and prosecute fraud if elected for CFO?
All right, so fraud happens on both sides of the coin. Problem is our state law does not allow insurance fraud to be against insurance carriers. I know. Yeah. The fraud is only for those who file claims against insurance. Insurance is not held liable for fraud. They call it bad faith, bad claims practices, breach of contract, but they don't call it fraud. So, yes. So I believe that fraud is on both sides of the coin, period. Unfortunately, when it comes to carrier actions, we have to take a whole different approach, and I will hold the carriers accountable. This whole idea of, a couple of years ago, they fined eight carriers total of $2 million. That's only a few $100,000 each. That's a drop in the bucket. That doesn't. That's nothing. That's administrative cost for them, right? So that was just political theater or whatever. Hey, we spent this money, whatever. When it comes to fraud and when it comes to carrier actions, we're going to hold everyone accountable, period. One of the things I want to do in DFS is I want to revamp our system so where we actually track and actually put together a spreadsheet of complaints, underpayments, denials, every metric when it comes to measuring claims. And then when we see a pattern that emerges, which there will be a pattern, because I mean, if you look at Oklahoma and California, they're filing lawsuits against State Farm for RICO charges because they sold policies with no intention to pay claims. We see that here in Florida, but Florida's not taking any action. Makes you wonder why, you know. But when we see those metrics, when we put those metrics together and we see the pattern, then we can actually use that pattern to start holding people accountable. We'll hold the carriers accountable for their actions. Contractors, we have a unlicensed practice of public adjusting. I'm going to tell every carrier the moment you are in negotiations with a contractor, I want to hear about it, because we're going to hold those contractors liable under Florida statute for practicing public adjusting without a license, because contractors are not legally allowed to represent homeowners in insurance claims. Only public adjusters and attorneys. Public adjusters, if your estimate is higher than Xactimate's default estimate, which for those who are listening, Xactimate is this industry standard for estimating a loss. So many public adjusters use a default price list because we're not contractors, so we don't know. But if your estimate is higher than the default estimate, then you're going to have to sit and justify why you are inflating an estimate, and that could be considered possibly fraud. Because if you're going against insurance companies saying it's going to cost one thing, actually costs another, and you know it's going to cost something else, that's fraud. So, you know, we're going to hold everyone accountable, and homeowners who file frivolous claims against insurance companies. And I'm going to say frivolous because if your roof is 30 years old and it's already collapsing in on itself, and you're saying, oh, the wind recently caused damage. No, that's just from lack of maintenance. That's long term. You know it's long term. You're just trying to get a free roof. We're going to hold you accountable. It needs to be equally applied. Right now, the system is not equally applied. It is pick and choose who they want to go after. So it's going to be, here's the standard. If you go past it, if you don't meet the standard, we're going to hold you accountable. Real simple. It's just going to be across the board. So we are going to actively pursue any kind of fraud in Florida, and that includes against our elected officials. If you guys use money fraudulently that's given to you from the taxpayers or from the state of Florida, we're going after you as well. Politicians are not going to be safe under my under my DFS control, because guess what? You're held accountable to the electorate, and you're held accountable to the state as well, because you receive state funds. Everyone's going to be treated equally, period.
Yeah. So you mentioned hurricanes earlier. And as we know, Florida is no stranger to hurricanes and other natural disasters. What role should Chief Financial Officer play in helping families and businesses recover more quickly after major storms?
I think it's an important role. The CFO is the person who regulates insurance. They're supposed to be the experts in insurance from the state level, right? So where's the CFO at? Well, you know, when hurricanes hit Florida, our previous CFO, Jimmy Petronas, went out there and told everyone, don't use public adjusters. But then he used a public adjuster for his own claim. So don't be a hypocrite. The best way the CFO can help Floridians is by advocating for Floridians. That's his job. Why? You know, his job is not to do what lobbyists and special interests tell him to do. His job is to advocate for Floridians. So after hurricanes hit, he should be providing information out to the public, such as, hey, here's your rights. You have the right to an attorney. You have the right to hiring a public adjuster. Here's a list of public adjusters that are licensed by our office. Here's a list of attorneys that we know work first party claims. Provide details, provide information to the local Red Cross, provide all this information that people need to rebuild themselves. Now, another aspect is, as CFO, I'm going to advocate with to the legislators, because I truly believe that under a state of emergency, we should increase ALE coverage by 100%. It's because ALE, which is additional living expenses, ALE is set at a certain level, right? We all know that. Now, after a catastrophe, state emergency incident such as a major hurricane, think about Hurricane Ian, right? When Hurricane Ian came, all these homes were completely destroyed. People couldn't live, nothing, and they're still rebuilding. And they ran out of ALE, and they ran out of ALE because building material were not readily available. Contractors were overburdened. There weren't enough contractors. It's going to take way too long to get to that, and most people's ALE will not cover the full time that is needed to do a complete rebuild. So the CFO and the legislators should have already been doing this, but under state of emergency, I think the ALE coverage needs to be increased 100% in order to provide that extra relief for people, so they're not out on the street. They're not, living on people's couches and stuff like that. They can actually live and get their houses taken care of. And, like I said, CFO's job should be advocating for Floridians, not advocating for lobbyists.
You've spoken about creating a catastrophe fund to strengthen Florida's disaster preparedness. Can you explain what that proposal would be funded? Oh, I said that wrong. Excuse me.
I understand what you're trying to say.
Yeah.
So Florida already has a catastrophe fund, but it's underfunded. It's sitting at roughly about $17 billion. I think it should be doubled to $34 billion. And what the catastrophe fund does, it is essentially kind of acts like a reinsurance that helps Florida get back on its feet, right? Now, this can work twofold. One is we increase the catastrophe fund, which would not impact, it would not cost Floridians anymore, because Florida is already operating at a surplus. We can just redirect part of that surplus to the catastrophe fund to build it up. So the catastrophe fund can be used to offset citizens when we turn it to a reinsurer program. So that, because remember, insurance companies pay reinsurance. And I want citizens to offer the lowest insurance rates for reinsurance for hurricanes. That way we can get carriers to Florida. And then Florida is known to go back to back, storm after storm after storm. But then we also go year after year after year with nothing. So we have highs and lows. So we build a catastrophe fund up. Citizens uses the money that they receive from premiums from reinsurance, reinvest it themselves, et cetera. And then whenever there's storms, carriers file their claim with reinsurance. Reinsurance pays them, and then citizens will send the catastrophe fund their breakdown, and catastrophe fund reimburse citizens, and then we just keep the cycle keep going. This way, Florida takes care of Florida, because at some point, and we all know this, every presidential cycle, FEMA is always on the table for being cut. Some point, FEMA will be cut. And unfortunately, it's really proactive. And wait until the cut FEMA to so we gotta adapt it ourselves, put it up, we gotta fund it properly. Now, we currently have one, it's just underfunded. Costs of goods have gone up, cost of labor has gone up, cost of rebuilding has gone up, everything's gone up. We got to increase it with where it is now, and also add a stopgap in it to increase with the cost of living. So that's the way I think it needs to go, and that's based off of years of work in insurance claims. I see it happening day in, day out. And I think that again, we need to be proactive, not reactive.
Yeah. It looks like your connection cut out a little bit with that last question.
Yeah, it kind of did.
Yeah, well, to wrap it up, if elected, what would success look like by the end of your first term? And what message would you like to leave with Florida voters as they prepare to cast their ballots?
At the end of my term, well, one, within the first 180 days, we're going to make sure all the budget is line by line presented to the public, because that's something I don't need legislative approval for. By end of my term, I want to have a solid insurance market in Florida. I want us to set the standard nationwide, because right now every state operates drastically different. My company's in 8 states, and every state is drastically different. But Florida can set the standard. Florida can lead by example. Florida can say, hey, this is how it's done. This is how it should be done. This is how it works. And so at the end of 4 years, if we have a stable market where rates did not increase, or if they did, it was very small increases just for inflation. But I don't want it to increase. Matter of fact, I want it to decrease. And if we can keep the rates level where they're at, or even decrease it, I would consider that as a win.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It was
Thank you.
great talking to you. Yeah.
I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, of course.